Not only are our favorite Marvel heroes amazing at saving the day, Infinity War notwithstanding, but they also manage to look amazing while doing so. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the characters who showed up in impressive ways at some key points in MCU history. Whether they exuded a commanding presence or made us laugh so much we had tears streaming down our face, we're celebrating some of the best entrances we've ever seen. It's no secret that Spider-Man is one of the most beloved superheroes of all time. Although it was created by Sony and not Marvel Studios, the movie Spider-Man is credited with helping kick off the craze of superhero movies back in 2002. Years later in 2008, Marvel Studios got started creating their own cinematic universe, and it started to feel wrong that Spider-Man wasn't involved. But thanks to some superhuman caliber negotiating, Marvel Studios got the rights to introduce Spider-Man into their universe, and when he swung into the MCU, he did so in the most memorable way possible. With possibly the strangest and yet most awesome battle cry ever, Tony Stark yells "Underoos!" and all of a sudden, Captain America's shield is caught in Spider-Man's webbing. It's a battle scene Peter Parker will excitedly talk about for ages afterward, including during his own movie Spider-Man: Homecoming. Of course, he could have stuck the landing a little better, but his endearing awkwardness around meeting his heroes for the first time has had us laughing at a time when tensions were high. We have a feeling this wasn't how he imagined meeting the famous Captain America, but hey, he made the best of the situation. There were many exciting action-packed moments during Avengers: Infinity War, but this triple threat entrance may be one of the best. At the beginning of the movie, Thor wasn't at his best. He'd lost his eye, his brother, and his beloved hammer Mjolnir recently, and was feeling a bit down. It was a bad week, but instead of brooding, he decided to make a brand new weapon and some new friends along the way. He teamed up with Guardians of the Galaxy's Rocket Raccoon and Groot, and set about helping forge a new axe called Stormbreaker. The effort nearly cost Thor his life, and cost his new pal Groot his arm. But apparently that's just the kind of thing that really helps bring people together. When the three best friends finally arrived at the battle raging in Wakanda, they did so in style. Thor bellowed, "Bring me Thanos!" while positively decimating everything around him. The Avengers theme played triumphantly as he and his pals proceeded to absolutely wreck everything and everyone unlucky enough to be near them. It was so awesome it almost makes up for Thor failing to take down Thanos once the two finally met up. Well, almost. Come on, Thor, why didn't you aim for the head? Even the families of us mere mortals can get complicated from time to time, so when you have a blended family of gods straight out of Norse mythology, things get downright bizarre. The MCU versions of Thor, Loki, and Odin are shockingly more well-adjusted than their mythological counterparts, but that doesn't mean there aren't a few skeletons in their closets, and by skeletons we mean a sister who's both estranged from the family and quite deranged. We always knew Odin did a pretty lousy job being a father to Thor and Loki, but apparently he had improved after raising his first child, Hela. She grew so out of control that he had to ground her by sending her to hell. Yeah, and you thought getting sent to your room was bad. During Thor Ragnarok, Hela emerges once Odin perishes and doesn't even bother to pretend she's interested in making nice with her siblings. She straight up commands Thor and Loki to kneel before her, and when they don't, she reacts by breaking Thor's favorite possession. Older siblings, huh? Her power is so overwhelming that Loki's sense of self-preservation kicks in, and he straight up nopes right out of there. While their retreat ended up being strategic, Hela's entrance was undeniably awesome. There are a lot of things you could say about Tony Stark, and not all of them are nice. According to Nick Fury, he's volatile, self-obsessed, and doesn't play well with others. And even Pepper Potts doesn't disagree with that assessment. But to his credit, Tony Stark definitely knows how to make an entrance, and he's proven that time and time again over his career in the MCU. We think his best entrances take place during the Avengers. Considering that this movie brought together some of our favorite Marvel heroes, that's quite the accomplishment. It manages to combine Iron Man's sense of bravado and showmanship with the meeting of two amazing superheroes. During the movie, Captain America is facing off against Loki while Natasha Romanoff observes from the Quinjet. All of a sudden, someone manages to override her aircraft's sound system, causing it to blare out AC/DC while Iron Man flies past. He effortlessly blasts Loki to the ground, manages a graceful landing, and casually addresses Captain America as if nothing interesting had just happened. Tony Stark isn't just a super rich businessman. He's also an impressive showman. If only the friendship between Steve and Tony could have been as effortless as this Avengers entrance. Although Tony's entrance during the Avengers is one of our favorites, he isn't the only hero to make an incredible appearance in the movie. Before it was released, The Incredible Hulk was hyped up to be a huge success by Marvel Studios. At the time, Hulk was a much better known superhero than Iron Man, and Marvel Studios was confident the movie would be a massive hit while Iron Man's success was a gamble. But as we all know, Iron Man is considered an amazing movie, while The Incredible Hulk is one of those films many people like to forget exists. So seeing Bruce Banner in The Avengers was kind of odd, especially considering he was now played by Mark Ruffalo and not Edward Norton. Some fans were tentative about the change, but those doubts disappeared when the Hulk came out to play. Bruce Banner seemingly spent a long time trying to keep his temper in check, but later on in the movie, he uttered the now famous line, "That's my secret, Cap, I'm always angry," and then promptly transformed into the towering Hulk who proceeded to start wrecking everything around him. Hulk managed to make an incredible entrance, put Loki in his place, and absolutely steal the show. Captain America may not be as flashy as Iron Man or as intimidatingly terrifying as the Hulk, but that doesn't mean he can't make an entrance when he wants to. When Avengers Infinity War hit theaters, it had been a couple of years since we'd seen Steve Rogers in action, and many of us were looking forward to his reappearance. Well, there were his public service announcements in Spider-Man Homecoming, but those don't really count. During Infinity War, we were definitely kept waiting for quite some time, as various other characters appeared prior to the introduction of Steve Rogers. Right when we were starting to get concerned about the fate of the first Avenger, he definitely made his presence known. When the Black Order attacked Scarlet Witch and Vision, things were looking pretty grim for our heroes. That is until Captain America made his triumphant return. Once a nearby train flew past, he emerged from the shadows rocking a very distinguished-looking beard. He deftly caught a weapon thrown by Proxima Midnight, and he, Black Widow, and Falcon proceeded to rescue Scarlet Witch and Vision. Turned out Captain America hadn't been letting his abilities wane during his absence, and he showed up ready, willing, and able to defend Earth from Thanos and his minions. Although we may hate that he deprived us of so many beloved Marvel characters, we have to admit Thanos is a compelling villain. One of the great things about the MCU spanning so many years and so many movies is that it's possible to build huge amounts of anticipation for certain characters and events. The appearance of Thanos was first teased all the way back in the first Thor movie, when an Infinity Gauntlet complete with Infinity Stones was spotted in Odin's vault. Of course, this was later revealed to be fake during Thor Ragnarok, but it served its purpose. During the Avengers, we got our first glimpse of Thanos when it was revealed he was the one who had set Loki's actions in motion. It was a chilling moment where Marvel fans realized there was an even greater threat than the Chitauri falling out of the sky, and those were pretty darn dangerous. Then, during Guardians of the Galaxy, we finally got a real view of Thanos himself. Although it was little more than a cameo and all he really did was float ominously in a chair, it was a clear harbinger of awful things to come in the MCU. Going into Avengers Infinity War, we had quite a few questions, and one of them was definitely, where the heck's the Soul Stone? We've seen the rest of the stones at various points in the MCU's history, but this one stone was seemingly well hidden. Fans guessed it was everywhere from Wakanda to a distant planet, and it turned out to be nowhere any of us would have expected. And to make it all the more shocking, it was also being guarded by a character who came completely out of left field. We had last seen Red Skull in Captain America: The First Avenger, which came out years ago. In the movie, Red Skull learned an important lesson about trying to obtain Infinity Stones, and the short takeaway was, you don't do it. They're gonna zap you. They're gonna make you whoosh to fly away. Anyway, he ended up being ripped through space and left on Vormir to guard the Soul Stone. Seeing him in Infinity War was quite a shock, and we had to wonder if that robe was part of the Soul Stone's job requirements. He was stuck guarding the Soul Stone until it was claimed by Thanos. Now that Red Skull is free, can't help but wonder when he's going to pop up again. Sometimes the way Marvel Studio holds back big reveals is positively masterful, but other times it seems like they show too much too soon. Even seeing it in the trailer couldn't entirely spoil this epic character introduction from the movie Thor Ragnarok. Usually running into an old friend during tough times is a good thing, but not when that pal is the Incredible Hulk. Thor learned that lesson the hard way when he ended up on the planet Sakaar at the mercy of the Grandmaster. Things were looking grim for Thor after his hammer had been destroyed and his father had passed away, and his brother certainly wasn't being helpful. Thor was forced to fight in a gladiatorial arena against an undefeated champion who turned out to be the Incredible Hulk. Seeing the Hulk burst out of the entrance in full gladiatorial armor was nothing short of amazing, as was the way he chose to greet his good friend Thor. Seeing Tony Stark and Steve Rogers fight against one another in Captain America: Civil War was heartbreaking, but this clash of the Titans involving Thor and the Hulk was just incredible. Not only was this an epic entrance, but it kicked off the beginning of a surprisingly talkative and calm Hulk. When it comes to villains in the MCU, Marvel Studios has sometimes struggled to make them actually compelling. Too often, they're one-dimensional, or only exist to be the antithesis of certain heroes. But then, we have Killmonger, who we were introduced to during the hit movie Black Panther. From the get-go, Killmonger was an incredibly compelling villain. We first saw him liberating some artifacts from a Wakandan exhibit at a museum. After calling out a staff member because of how the artifacts were obtained, Killmonger helps himself to the weapon and plans a hasty escape. But perhaps even better is when Killmonger shows up at Wakanda. He strides in like he owns the place and quickly calls out the late King T'Chaka for killing his father. While the tribal leaders are in shock, he casually greets the Queen Mother with a "Hi, Auntie." Despite never actually being in Wakanda before, Killmonger acts with a characteristic brashness and confidence during this scene. It's no wonder he was able to convince so many Wakandans to side with him as he demanded justice from his tribal leaders. Not only did Killmonger know how to make a powerful entrance, but at the end of the movie, we saw him go out like a champ as well. Some characters fly into battle in a heroic fashion, just in time to save the day. Sometimes there's a symphony of music or cheers of fans, but rarely is there a clink of beer bottles. The introduction of Valkyrie in Thor Ragnarok was perfect because it played into the comical tone of the movie while accurately portraying the attitude of the character as well as her less than stellar mental state. After his interaction with his long-lost sister, Thor ends up on Sakaar, where he runs afoul of some of the less than friendly locals. Suddenly, a spaceship lands, and Valkyrie emerges clutching a bottle of booze and calling dibs on Thor. At first, Valkyrie seems pretty cool and composed. That is until she stumbles into a pile of garbage. Hey, this isn't a list of the most dignified entrances, and even though she's fallen down drunk, she still manages to defeat Thor's pursuers and claim him as her own. Later, we learn Valkyrie started drinking in an effort to cope with the loss of her fellow Asgardian warriors who perished in the fight against Hela. Her introduction was just enough of a hint at a tragic backstory that this information was surprising, and her overcoming her trauma to defend Asgard was meaningful. Not all the characters in the MCU are serious, and indeed some of our favorite moments are those which involve some amount of levity. Enter our favorite human jukebox, Luis, who we first met in the movie Ant-Man. Although he can be long-winded at the best of times, nobody gives a better rundown of events than this guy, and he has his own kind of tragic backstory, even if he does manage to put a humorous spin on it. Once Scott Lang was released from prison, his old friend Luis picked him up in his totally sweet van. Scott tried to catch up with Luis about his life on the outside, but apparently things had been going less than stellar. Upon being asked about his girlfriend, Luis confesses she left him while Scott was in prison. Then he adds that his mother died and his father got deported, but none of that seemed to be weighing too heavily on Luis. He cheerfully informed Scott that at least he got the van. This introduction was totally unexpected, and helped set up the movie's surprisingly hilarious tone. It also made us look forward to hearing Luis speak in every subsequent scene he showed up in. When it comes to impressive visuals in a Marvel movie, it's hard to beat Doctor Strange. The movie was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, and it started out strong with some amazing effects, and the introduction of the Ancient One. Although we didn't get a face reveal until later, it wasn't hard to figure out that the Sorcerer Supreme was in this exciting scene. Her former student Caecilius is stealing one of the mystical texts, and the Ancient One isn't all too happy about it. We wonder if Wong was too busy listening to some Beyoncé. The Ancient One gives chase and uses her powers to create glass fractals and to manipulate the world around her to a ridiculous degree. When Caecilius manages to escape, the Ancient One puts everything back to normal, and acts like she didn't just transform the streets of London with her stupefying magic abilities. If Doctor Strange had seen this, we're guessing he'd have been a bit more polite and humble when he eventually meets the Ancient One. Although we do love scenes where she puts the smug Doctor Strange in his place, it's hard to beat out this raw display of power. Both behind the scenes and in front of the camera, Nick Fury has been responsible for a ton of interesting events in the MCU. After all, it was he who launched the Avengers initiative, which drew so many of our favorite heroes together in the first place. Interestingly enough, this now iconic Marvel character almost didn't make it into the 2008 movie Iron Man at all. When he did appear, it was in the very first post-credits scene in the history of the MCU. It kinda makes us sad thinking about all the people who probably missed it because they were rushing to throw away their oversized popcorn buckets. But those who stuck around got a serious hint of what was to come, and the very first appearance of Nick Fury in the MCU. Not only does he manage to get into Tony's house, which is no easy feat, but he's quick to burst Tony's bubble. He flat out tells the most self-centered character in the MCU that he's nothing special. And, oh, by the way, there are lots of other superheroes around. Apparently, Nick Fury thought that was the perfect segue to get into the Avengers initiative, and announced that Tony is now part of a bigger universe. Everybody knows Bucky Barnes and Steve Rogers are total friendship goals, and they've been besties for the most of their lives. When they first met, it was Bucky who was the stronger of the two. While he was excelling at his military career, Steve couldn't even get accepted into the military during wartime. But despite this disparity in power, these two had a great dynamic, and it was clear they considered themselves to be the best of friends. When things changed and Steve became Captain America, Bucky was then the one struggling to keep up with his pal. While at least he wasn't buried at the bottom of the ocean, Bucky wasn't exactly living the high life when Steve was indisposed. Most characters in the MCU thought he was gone for good, until he surprisingly appeared in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Bucky showed up as the brainwashed Hydra assassin, the Winter Soldier, and started blowing things apart and critically wounding Nick Fury. Apparently, subtlety isn't exactly this guy's style. It was an action-packed scene that revealed the extent of how dangerous Bucky had become over the years. Of course, some fans didn't yet realize it was Bucky, which made the later twist all the more impactful. Now that we've talked about some of our top picks, what's your favorite character entrance in the history of the MCU? Share your choice with us in the comments section below, and then click on that subscribe button for more great videos from us here at CBR. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.